How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, it's nice to be home, but as you know, like a lot of us in the world of sports entertainment, got to keep earning and got to keep generating and freelance. And of course, the
Yeah,
IPL is our biggest earner on the
yeah,
circuit,
yeah,
so it's a bit frustrating. But you know what to do in the whole um, coronavirus. It means, at least with I suppose our sort of governments in the West, they can do a delayed thing of mortgage payments and all those sort of things just get staggered and you pay it later down the track. But I think it's tough in the subcontinent where you just don't have those nets, do you? You don't have that system in place and it's just so massive.
yeah. I know
So
the stories of the laborers and daily wage workers is heart wrenching, and to watch them being in rooms with 20 people with nothing to eat and no employment, no money coming in. At least we all are secure and we have a house and roof above our head. They have absolutely nothing. It's a sad state of affairs.
I think, as you say, the world had to reset, regardless of people thinking the conspiracy with the US and the Chinese and what have you.
Yeah,
Um, it was going to happen at some point. It just
yeah,
sort of makes you take stock, doesn't it? And so,
yeah,
shit, what's important? Your health and your family and craziness.
yeah.
God, you feel so insignificant, don't you? Really, in the planet, you just feel with the Chinese or Americans or the Russians, the big boys.
Yeah.
Madness.
Danny, can I just request you to be a little back so that, yeah,
More here?
yeah, just a
Out there.
yeah, that's fine.
Do you want me to tilt
So,
that slightly?
yes, that's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
That's better.
Okay, so I'll basically be talking about your career and about commentary and moving to Australia
No.
and your different style. And I definitely want you to say double D's once.
Yeah. Well, I did a thing last night for Star, and they record it, edit it,
Uh,
and it goes on the show tomorrow in India on
okay,
Saturday.
okay,
So they had KP and Gigi. So they had
okay,
Gautam, and
okay.
then Sanjay Bunga made a little mini appearance. But yeah, we did that last night and had a bit of fun and talked
Okay.
about Delhi a lot because both those guys played at Delhi.
Yeah.
So it was quite cute.
Yeah, okay, I'll just start. Hello, everyone. I'm privileged to have Danny Morrison, a good friend, former New Zealand fast bowler, with me on the chat. Welcome to this chat, Danny. Great to have you with us.
Chandresh, good to be here, brother.
Danny, you started off at the age of 21 in international cricket. Your first match turned out to be dramatic because it was also the first time we saw a certain Mr. Sunil Gavaskar go belligerent. Were you shocked when he came out to bat and he batted in the way in your debut game?
Oh, right, that Reliance World Cup, wasn't it, of 1987? And that one day international debut, yeah, freaky. Because of the situation and how India needed to get, I think it was around about 240 runs in a certain amount of time in those overs to then have a home semi-final. So it's funny, isn't it? You change the dynamic or you create the situation that says to Sonny Gavaskar, you've got to play a bit like this. You have to play with a bit more urgency. And it just showed from the little master, what he could actually do. Yes, everyone will go on about, look, it was small boundaries, it was the old Nagpur, but, the way he played against someone like, and particularly Ewan Chatfield, who was, very much a very good line and length bowler. There was Willie Watson, there was Martin Stead and myself. But when you think about the way he played, and in a way, you think about that whole scenario, how it got set up beautifully for India to make that semi-final. They ended up playing England in Mumbai. So, he could play, and it just showed what he was capable of when he wanted to.
Tell us something about how you came into the side, because you were 21, you had not played for New Zealand then. How did your selection happen, and were you surprised when you got picked for that World Cup?
It's funny, you look back and you chat to guys about it, that it was an opportunity because the great Richard Hadlee didn't want to go to the subcontinent and play in the World Cup of '87. He was saving himself in a way, Richard Hadlee, for Test cricket, and and so the opportunity to have me go as some experience. It was the last game we played. I didn't play any of the stuff before. You could argue, could I have had a game against, I think we played Zimbabwe and Kolkata and didn't. But to be fair too, the pitches there really did suit pace off the ball and the spinners. You had Johnny Bracewell, you had Stephen Bock. We changed things around to allow, you think about Martin Snedden opening
Danny,
the
your
batting.
video's gone. Danny, your video's gone. Can you just switch it on?
Okay, coming back. Here we go.
Yeah. So can I start again? Were you surprised when you got picked for that 1987 World Cup as a 21-year-old?
Yes and no, because in a way they were looking for someone to be really blood and exposed, because Richard Hadley was a bit more focusing on Test match cricket at the time, and this is late '87, and there was a big tour to Australia coming up, and also he was looking to that record of Ian Botham's was getting closer and all of that sort of thing. So Richard Hadley really did map out what he was about to try and do and how much longer could he stay in the game of Test cricket. So I got an opportunity, and you could argue, could I have played a bit earlier in the tournament against Zimbabwe, I think in Kolkata? Probably tough, because you had Johnny Bracewell, you had Evan Gray, the left-arm spinner, and Stephen Bock, another left-arm spinner. And in that setup there, Chandresh, was that Martin Snedden, my club mate and state mate, Sned's opened the batting for a bit. So he came out and they used him as an opening batter a bit to change up the dynamic to fit in the extra spin when you had another option for Dipak Patel, Johnny Bracewell, those two first choice guys, or would they pick Stephen Bock, or would they go with Evan Gray? We had so much based around the spin angle.
Who was your hero growing up as a fast bowler?
You get that asked a lot. When I think back to the two dynamic guys sort of going head-to-head, locking horns, was at Eden Park in 1977, which was the great Dennis Lillee and the great Richard Hadley. And so watching that unfold and these two characters going head-to-head inspired me a lot. And so, I started out as a wicketkeeper because, there was, places up for grabs, or the coach says, why don't you try that? Because, wicket keepers are in the game, they're catching the ball, they're down the barrel, they're watching it all the time. And we really need someone who's, and you're quite a good catcher, Danny. So I started there. And then it was not until about 78, 79 that, I started to get more involved with bowling around that time of 79. So Dennis Lillee was such a big impression on me.
And to be able to bowl alongside Sir Richard Hadley towards the fag end of his career, how big a moment was that for you as a youngster?
It was huge, because in 1982, I was in my sort of second to last year in college. I was 16, and I was the vice captain in the first 11 cricket team, and 5 of us wagged school. We took the day off school to watch the great Aussie side there with, captained by Greg Chappell. You had Bruce Yardley, Dennis Lillee, Rod Marsh. You had all these, Jeff Thompson, a very good side, Terry Alderman, and they were a great side. And then, New Zealand with Richard Hadley, and I think Jeff Houth was captain, and Wright and Edgar and those sort of guys. And it was a great time to be around watching that. So we wagged school to go and see these guys in that Eden Park Test match of 1982. Fast forward to late 1987, and here you go. Nearly 6 years later, you were playing with a guy that you really looked up to as a hero because you saw at high school level. To then be alongside was remarkable. And when I look back on that, there are those times when you pinch yourself and go, wow, felt like a dream, felt so surreal, but was just a blast.
The next big milestone, so to speak, was the 92 World Cup. And were you surprised when Martin Crowe threw the ball to Deepak Patel? Were you guys aware in the team that this was the change of strategy, bowling with Deepak Patel, opening with Mark Greatbatch and going for hammer and tongs? What was the mood like in the team?
Well, we had nothing to lose, you see, because we're playing at home and we just got beaten 3-0 by England, with Ian Botham, and Gooch was captain, and Derek Pringle, and they had a very balanced side. Alex Stewart keeping, Robin Smith, Chris Lewis was looking very useful young all-rounder. So Lamb and Smith, those guys were stunning players. when Fairbrother was coming into his own. So when I look back on that, Martin Crowe and Warren Lees, the coach, discussed this a little bit, obviously had meetings that we didn't know about with Dipak to say, Dip, how do you feel about holding the ball, the new white ball, And in a way, he'd done it in first-class cricket with us for Auckland because we'd played on Eden Park number 2. It's a bit like at Lords with the nursery going Chandresh out the back. You've seen it there. Just keep losing that video, don't we? Popping that up, just drops out. You know, start that again?
Yeah. So I said your video, I still can't see it.
It sort of drops out from time to time, doesn't it? I don't know why. But
Yeah.
you want to start that segment again? Yeah.
Yeah. I can't still see you.
You can't? I've got you and me together.
Yeah.
Good.
Finally, yeah. I'll just start again.
I wonder too, Chandresh, whether there's so much people using the internet, it's massive,
Yeah.
because of the sign.
Yeah. So, Danny, the next big thing that I want to talk about is the 1992 World Cup. How many of you in the team were aware that Deepak Patel is going to be opening the bowling? Margaret Batch is going to go hammer and tongs right at the top. And when did you realize that, Deepak's actually going to be using the new ball?
Not really until that first meeting, because I think, Marty Crowe and Warren Lees, the real think tank of it, were trying to come up with something different. We'd lost 3-0 to England leading into that World Cup of a mini one-day series. So when I look at it, they probably felt that because of the lack of pace of our pitches, they were going to go with spin on it, something unique, something very different to surprise and shock the opposition that at that time were all used to facing quick bowling with the new balls inside the first 10 overs. So your wonderful coup. And I think a lot of us were, in a way, kept in the dark. Not only, Dipak would bowl with new balls or bowl in the nets and that. And you really were just worrying about your own thing, Chandresh, getting on with your own job and skill set to do stuff. And those sort of strategies were left up to Crowe and to Warren Lees, the coach. So, hats off to them. It was a wonderful ploy and it was a great strategy.
How difficult was it to get over the loss in the semi-final, 92?
It's a funny thing. I mean, look, of course, we were all so down, but it was to the end of our series. It was right at the end for us down under with our season. And I look back at it, and in a team meeting we had, our goal was to make the semi-final because it was just the round robin stuff, and then your last 4 teams like the semis. And for us to try and make a semi-final was a big thing because we'd been so young. We had that whole Hadley retirement in the middle of 1990 and, Martin Sneddon, Jeff Crowe, John Bracewell, Hatfield the year before, the great Richard Hadley. We lost a massive nucleus of players in the middle of 92. So here we were, just not quite 2 years later, that World Cup, sort of 18, 19 months later, we're playing that World Cup without those big names. And so it really was a changing and shifting of the guard. And for us to play that well, Martin Crowe to play beautifully, was the player of the tournament, won the car, all that sort of thing. He led beautifully from the front. The ploy of Dipak, changing the bowlers, Chris Harris, Roddy Latham with a bit, and the dibbly dobbly and wobbly as they were nicknamed on those slow pitches back then. It sort of worked. And we won 7 on the trot, then lost to Pakistan in Christchurch, and then had to play them again in the semi-final. So that, when you technically look at it, Chandresh, they were the only side we lost to, and then they ended up winning the World Cup. So they beautifully peaked right at the right time. And look, sure, disappointing, but I think when you look back retrospectively, and I looked at that, some of the guys obviously crying and waving around the ground and saying goodbye and thanks so much. It was a wonderful month of our lives. And we stumbled at that semi-final, but I look back and it was such fond memories. It was a great tournament. First time in coloured clothing. It was all, before that was all in whites. And it was a really amazing time of our lives.
2 moments stand out for me in your test career. One against Australia in Auckland in 93 and then against Pakistan at Christchurch. You also had another moment in Antigua where you took 5 for 61 in the second innings after going for none for 124 in the first. How do you look back at those 2 wins specifically against Australia and Pakistan? Because both those sides were rampant sides at that time.
Let's go back chronologically from the reverse, if you like, from the West Indies, because that was right near the end. It was my only 5-wicket haul overseas, because I got a lot of 4-wicket bags, but we tended to share it around. And when I look at it too, the game of Test cricket was so much like a war of attrition. The modern game, they play more shots, Test matches get finished, they get results. We tended to play, as you know, Chan, in an era where it was dour, it was tough. You know, the pitches tended to be a bit flatter. The batting wasn't so aggressive. You know, you'd leave a lot more. You'd be stout in defence. So when you look back at that, that was a blast for me. So none for 100, as you point out in the first innings. And then because the pitch got a little bit more abrasive and we knew about reverse swinging by those early mid-90s, it worked for me and went around a bit and was lovely. And it allowed the ball to get older and you could shape it. And we used those dukes in the Caribbean at that time in 96. So that holds fond memories. And, you know, you're up against a very good side there. And I think I nicked out Lara there in one of those, part of that fifer. And he was, he was at the peak of his powers, you know. So that was very, very rewarding. And then when I look back to, was it Pakistan? And it was in Christchurch, wasn't it? A little bit before that. Very frustrating way, because I had a couple of drop catches early on. It probably would have meant I got a 10. I think I got 2 4s or something. I think I'd sort of vaguely remember I missed out on getting a 10 for because I think it was and Rutherford got injured and he dropped one at mid-off off me, because he's normally in the covers or slip. And then Blaney, I think, dropped one. It's funny you remember the ones that are more about the drops rather than getting people out. It was the ones that, and so when I look at that Test match, it ebbed and flowed, and they were a great side. And part of me, you know, as much as it was a great time, you know, we were 2-0 down on the series, and you could argue they relaxed off. There was a lot of question marks about their Test match later on, where the guys were underperforming, all that sort of thing. But when I look back at the 2 Ws, man, they ran in, they bowled quick, and I remember them bowling very nasty to Brian Young, Blair Hartland, and even Shane Thompson. He got 100 too. And I remember Waka, that pitch was bouncing and whizzing, quite aggressive still, and, you know, were going at you. And then I look at the other one prior to that, which was the Aussies of 93. You mentioned there getting that bang of wickets there at Eden Park, which was particularly pleasing because it was on my home track. So where I'm from, at Auckland, and it nibbled around a bit. And the conditions suited. Lovely overcast conditions, perfect for a bit of swing and seam bowling. And I think Crowe won the toss. Can't remember. I think we bowled first anyway. I do recall, I think we bowled first. And so that was a nice feeling, because a mate of mine, actually, why I remember, isn't it funny? People going about stats and they get very involved, and you talk to some guys and they can remember, you know, just like getting everyone out, certain guys out all the time. And then I remember my mate was getting married, and I went there. And why I remember this, because they were all excited, because I think I took my 100th Test match wicket in that Test. My mate was getting married during that Test, and I was about to get married after that season finished. So it was a lovely time, and that's more of the memory I have of being around at that time, of getting a few people out, yes, but it was my mate from school. We played first 11 cricket together. A guy called Warren Keane was getting married, and from straight after the game, I had a shower and that there, took a change of clothing because I'd taken my suit and met my dear wife-to-be at the wedding reception. Couldn't go to the wedding, playing Test cricket, but went to the wedding reception. It was good fun.
94, you got a hat-trick against India. How long did it take for you to realize that you've got a hat-trick?
Well, good question, because the hat-trick was split over 2 overs, and I'd taken, I think, a wicket on 5 and 6 of the previous over, and, you know, everyone just caught up in the game and it's ticking along. And then I gave my hat and sunglasses to the ump, and then realised, and then the noise started to take over and the theatre of the place started to erupt. And I went, and then Ken Rutherford goes, mate, I'll have a couple of slips tonight, you know, come on. And I went, Dawn, yes, of course. Hello. It's a hat-trick ball, even though it's the start of a new over. There are 3 consecutive deliveries. And Mongia got pushed down the order because they wanted to see, you know, Kapler got out, and then I think Ancola, you know, is a big, strong guy, and he was going to give it a long handle and, you know, try and lift the rate. and Mongia got pushed down the order. So as it turned out, you know, and like I make no bones, and people laugh about it. And geez, all this drama, Chandresh, and an exclusive on your YouTube channel, admitting to being naughty with the ball and getting fined and being checked. I mean, we all knew that the W's were greater. They were just better than anyone else at it, you know. And so, in terms of lifting the quarter seam or scratching a little bit to make it go, those white balls. And remember, back then we didn't swap the ball after 32 overs or 34 overs, whatever it is. We had this old ball. It was beautiful, and it must have been about 42, I don't know, 43 overs old. Went lots. And so one had got roughed up anyway, because Napier's a very hard track. You've been there, McLean's Park, very abrasive, lovely green outfield, but tough, hard wicket, and would slide on. And so I remember, you know, we'd roughed it a bit and it went. And so when you look back to that time, that's what you knew, that the two W's were very good at it. And this whole thing around reverse swing and getting one side really rough and keeping the other side shiny, and the ball older was just magic. Plus, if you look at that footage, there's a bit of shadow across, so it's tough for poor old Mongia to face that. And you know, it was, when I think back, those three deliveries, right on the button. That one I bowled before that to Ancola was probably one of my best Yorkers of all time. I bowled a lot, because you watch the two W's and what were they doing, and Waka getting a bit lower on the clock, you know, instead of being up here at sort of midday, it's out there at about 1 or 2 and tailing it. So, yeah, went with that, and it worked. And so it was a real blast. And, of course, crowd went nuts. And it was a very close crowd, a bit like some of the grounds in India. It's a rugby ground, very small. So, yeah, that was an exciting time as well, a real blast.
Was it a common secret about what the W's did in the 90s? And did all the fast bowlers around the world try to pick it up from them? Would you talk to them?
Yeah. Well, not so much you can talk to them, because they're obviously not really wanting to expose that too much. But what had happened was in 1990 got exposed because Imran Khan wasn't playing that series. So in Martin Crowe, we took this very young side just after Hadley retired. Yeah, Chris Kringle, myself, Willie Watson, the guy Stu Roberts, who didn't really play much in it, but you had a lot of young guys in there. And we were watching what they were doing. And so we intercepted the ball in the test match in Lahore and could see, obviously, something had been going on the rough side, untoward. And so that's when we got involved in it. Okay, and then by Faisalabad being naughty and scratching the ball, went around corners, did crazy things. And so when you know, and you play on those flat pitches back then anywhere, it was tough to get people out. So the reverse swing, you can understand why it developed in the subcontinent, understandably so. And so, you know, people talk to you, you know, you put a line, or, you know, tennis ball, you put tape on one side and it goes. Or if you put a smile, a big cut in a golf ball, that'll go and do a crazy thing aerodynamically. So, yeah, we sort of picked up on it in those early 90s. And by the time of that one-day stuff going on, particularly, I think more so in New Zealand, because we didn't have two balls like an Aussie. And in Australia...
your video's gone.
We, just clicking it there.
Yeah.
In Australia, you had two balls. We only had one in New Zealand. It got old quickly.
And were you happy when reverse swing was accepted as a key part of everybody's bowling arsenal later on? Everybody sort of accepted it later on.
Yeah, and look, and there was a lot of exposure around it, Chandresh. When I think back to people writing cricket columns, and former greats, and having a discussion about this and going, because there were photos, you know, you had, I think, different players biting it and, you know, having a go at the ball. The argument was then, okay, why don't we make the pitches, and they all pretty much already were very flat. And so he said, well, some of the guys said, look, if it's part of your anatomy, fingernail, teeth, biting it, let's make it a free-for-all and then make the pitches good. And the spinners can still have a say. They can do their thing. They love the older ball. Fast bowlers now want that because they get the swing, if they're good enough to do that, can get on with that. So when I look at that, there was that transition period. Now they, you know, later on, they really did start to microscope it, get an eye on it. You know, then there was the thing with the, you know, the spinners and then the quick bowlers with the degree of all of that sort of happening in the early 2000s. So again, under the microscope, more cameras, more technology, things started to change. But I think we all loved that in those mid-90s, where, if you like, the cat was let out of the bag a little bit, where the reverse thing, and people started to know what to do and rough one side up quicker.
There was a phase in New Zealand cricket between 93, 94 and say 96 when there were a lot of churning happening in the side. Ken Rutherford went out to the side. Martin Crowe was in and out with his injuries. Lee Jarmon becoming captain. And there was this big incident with Matthew Hart and Stephen Fleming in South Africa. How difficult as a senior pro was it for you to adjust to all these changes that were happening in the side?
Well, it was a very fragmented time, as you mentioned, Chandresh, and I was in and out of the side a lot too. Let's be fair, I had my first hernia operation when I was filling in for the great Wasim Akram at Lancashire in July, I think it was, 92. Then I had another hernia procedure in Auckland in 94, the end of the winter. After that tour of England, I broke down with a hamstring and a groin injury. And then I had another injury in 96. So you talk about that time zone in the mid-90s where Crowe, his knee, he couldn't guarantee his fitness, so he couldn't be captain. Rutherford had to take over. The side was very fragmented. It was very inconsistent. Jeff Howarth got sacked as coach. All those off-the-field activities. We were nicknamed the Wild Bunch. It was pretty out there and pretty crazy. But at the same time, you're playing for your country and you're professional and for a lot of us were fit and really raring to go and wanting to make the most of this opportunity. And when I look back, it was a difficult time because of the changing of the captaincy. Then Glenn Turner came back as a coach of that time. And he was of a different era in a way. And it really changed. And the younger guard, I'm talking about Chris Cairns and Stephen Fleming and Adam Perori, Dion Ash, all those guys coming through were a whole new era. And even I started to feel on the outer of that guys like myself and Great Batch. Rutherford left to go and play in South Africa. And Great Batch, Dipak Patel finished around a similar time to me. All of us older guys were starting to move, and this new brigade was coming in. And then you suddenly had Steve Rickson. They wanted a neutral coach, someone from outside the square to get away from a New Zealander. And they went with Steve Rickson. And he, understandably, when I look back on it a little bit more retrospectively, frustrated and grumpy at the time, for sure. Me and others having to finish. Not how we really wanted to, but hey, no one writes the script. Whether you're injured or you're dropped or you're out of favour, life's not perfect. We know that. So, and there was a real shifting and change. And, Jamon got moved on. Fleming took over as the young captain. You could see that was that whole transition shifting and moving. And it was a frustrating, difficult time. But look, we also had some great times, had some good fun on the tour and played some decent cricket at times. Sadly, Chandresh, it just wasn't consistent enough for what the fans, and rightly so, what they demanded and deserved in a way.
You were very sporting enough to accept the title, the Duckman, for your batting efforts in Test cricket. There's a story about, I think your video's gone again.
Got that?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah, I'll start again.
Yeah.
I said,
it's funny, it just drops out. I don't know why it drops out. My battery's good, so I'll just check my battery.
I think it's got to do with the internet. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were quite sporting enough to accept the nickname, the Duckman. There's a story about how in '96 you got a tie full of ducks manufactured in your honor, and you went as far as calling duck callers for hunters. What was all that about? Why did you love that thing, and how did you take it so sportingly?
Well, suddenly that crept up very quickly. The world record for ducks getting closer and closer. To your dear fellow, Mr. Chandresh, the spinner, wasn't he? So he had the record. And so when I look back at it, I'm that sort of a character too that, for me, Chandresh, that whole essence of the game. No one's bigger than the game. And I played alongside Johnny Bracewell, Jeff Crowe, Martin Snedden. These guys were very good about being humble to the game. The game doesn't owe you anything. You owe it everything in terms of playing, traveling the world, staying in nice hotels, playing for your country. There's so many people, I don't have to tell you, I mean, you're the land of a billion and some, would, give their right arm to play, for your country, the game of cricket. And so when I look back on it, I batted down at, 10 or 11. I loved coming in doing the night watchman job. And about my focus, I suppose, at that time, people laugh and go, oh, no, you're just crap, But at the time about it was that I was going out there to do a job to survive for the guy at the other end, because he was clearly better than I was at batting. And so when I went there to do the night watchman's job, I loved it. You get the ball whistling around your head, the big W's and coming at you and bombing you, and then your Yorkers digging out. And if you could survive those, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you've done your job and saved your teammate who was coming in at batting at, 3, 4, 5, 6, coming in. And that happened to us a lot, I might add, too, Chandresh. We, got knocked over rigged at the top. A lot of that changing of the guard when Johnny Wright retired and Trevor Franklin moved on, and, different guys were tried as openers and top order and then all that stuff. So I found myself doing night watchman a lot, and then either, getting out for naught, getting knocked over, or the next morning you're still naught, not out, but there you go, nick one early, see you later. But I liked it, and we used to have testimonials because the game, Chandresh, wasn't as professional as it is now. So your state or province gave you, or basically it followed from county cricket in England. They gave you a benefit season or a testimonial season celebrating your career, and you put on functions to make some money, run raffles, hopefully put towards your house or pay off a couple of cars or, whatever it was to do to help you towards it, saying thank you for being such a good, loyal servant to this province or state, either Canterbury, Wellington, Christchurch. I always played for Auckland. Dipak Patel had a testimonial before me. Willie Watson had the one before Dipak. So it was a lovely, those guys celebrating their seasons. And so I came out with the duck tie, the duck collar, and then we had duck on the menu. So some lunches and dinners we'd have, you had cooked duck, and then you could have the chocolate ducks on the side as an after dinner mint chocolate duck. So we had a great theme around Danny the Duck, because you had Donald Duck, the cartoon character. So we just had the synergy, and I could poke fun at myself and just say, look, here we go. Didn't try to get out for naught. You're there blocking, and I got a few not outs as well. But there was you had the record at the time. We made a T-shirt, like you go to the rock concerts and you see on the back of the shirt where the venues are. Well, we stuck all those where I got all my noughts against 2 and all that. So we just were celebrating. We're having a lot of fun. It wasn't all just about so serious and isn't he a lovely chap and hoorah and well done. And mate, people used to give me stick, tell jokes. I was the butt of jokes and having fun and really good anecdotal stuff at these functions. So I had a great time when I think back to it.
And an interesting thing is that in your last test innings, you saved a test match for New Zealand, batting with Nathan Hastel for the last wicket, having 106 runs, and you never played again. You saved a test match with the bat. You never played again in any format.
Yeah, well, and I finished up playing for Auckland. So in terms of the season finishing up, and that's where that changing of the guard was happening, Chandresh. You had Steve Rickson in there. He was on about, Danny, first and foremost, you're our strike bowler. You're taking wickets. You're not batting to save us a test match. You know what I mean? That's not your fundamental role, clearly. So when I went out there and, batted in sunglasses, went out there with Astle, again, nothing to lose. It was just a great time to go out there. And so, geez, when I came out after Dooley, again, coming out at 11, the sunglasses on, helmet, looked like the blind man coming out with a white cane. I think we were only about 10 runs ahead. And I came in and had a whole afternoon. So it looked like we were going to get run over. Michael Atherton, I played Lancashire County Cricket with to fill in for Wazim. Had a great time. And so we had a lot of fun, and they were giving me shit. And it was just great fun. It was just cheeky and a lot of laughs out there. And I thought, we'll wrap it up shortly. Morrison's here. He'll be mucking around. He might block it. We'll get him out soon. And it just dragged on and on. But back to the point, that was it for me. Yeah, look, I think I took a 3 for 2 many. It was about getting people out. And I think you could probably see too that, my fitness was not what it was. I was turning 31. I was 31. And perhaps it was time for, and I can see the others. Jeff Allett was in the wings, a couple of other guys that were there wanting to play more, get more opportunity. And you could see that Rickson was building this new group of guys with Nash, Chris Cairns, as I say, Jeff Allett coming into the lineup there, Shane O'Connor, another left-arm swinger, just a lot more younger, and that's where the future lay, that, the coach was looking for in that time.
Once you finished, you came out with 2 books. One which was on your life called Mad as You Want to Be, Mad as I Want to Be, and and also another book for young cricketers called Junior Cricket Diary. 2 contrasting styles. One which was termed as mental by a guy called Richard Whiting at the time, and another a tool for aspiring young cricketers. How did you think about these 2 books?
Well, the one was the finishing of the career. I sort of knew it looked like it was going to be pretty much ending, and there wasn't a lot of communication going on with New Zealand cricket. And I felt like I was left out in the cold a bit. Mad as I Want to Be could be like Pagal. Am I mad and crazy? Certainly am. But I like to call it mad fun, zany fun. And some thought it was mad and sad. A lot of journos got really stuck and said, "Oh, Dan, what sad case, you should have called it Sad as You Want to Be." Well, I'm the one who had to live it and breathe it. I got dropped. I got sacked. No one likes being sacked or dropped. Of course you don't. Losing your job, and all that's like too. And so at the time, it was a tough gig. And the mad, where I wanted to do it, I wanted to have another couple of titles, but they'd been used, so I couldn't use these other titles from autobiography. Martin Crowe was out on a limb. Kenny Rutherford had just done one before, was a hell of a way to make a living. And so Dennis Rodman, the great basketball player who played for the Chicago Bulls with MJ, he was bad as I want to be because he had that bad reputation. I thought, I'll go with mad. So let's just go with that. And we were running out of ideas, to be honest, about what was coming up. And so, Morrison, you're a little bit madcap and crazy, and you've had this duck tie and duck, testimonial season. So let's go with that. Yeah, no, fine. I'm cool with it. Yeah. So we went with that. And then the other side was the coaching side, which I went into. And then I did my level 3 coaching certificate. Loved giving back. I enjoyed coaching with youngsters, and was going to be my forte of pace bowling and do that. And this was just a landscape. No one had done an A5 landscape size diary where youngsters could fill it in. So when you think back to that, that was very, very late 90s, about 2000, the precursor to digital stuff. Now you think, God, that's so dated. And it is. You had a disc in the back of it, and that was just starting to come in with some of that sort of, magazines and put a disc in their thing, and you could have some color and slide it into your laptop. So it was good. It was just a really neat project to do. The telecommunications company that were the big sponsors for New Zealand cricket helped me there. I knew the American guy there was lovely. We got on well through my sponsored days at Auckland Cricket, and put it together. It was great. And a lot of production people do that because of my testimonial season with the magazine. And it seemed to be an opportunity in the marketplace to have a bit of fun, really cost-effective, cheap little thing that has a ring-binding spine on it. You could fold it right round in half, and it was in a landscape form that kids could fill it out, jot down their diary that scored that season there, look at some of the greats on the video that I'd played with and got footage of, and it was just nicely a basic thing mapped out. I used kids as the tutors. They were the models. I used a lot of them. So it was just a nice interactive book for junior cricket, which I really enjoyed doing.
And then you also got into television. You hosted the Cricket Company show on Sky. How did that come about? Was that a natural transition for you?
Yeah, people ask me about, in front of camera, and particularly the first few years of IPL, and dressing up and putting on gear and leaping around and lifting up a couple of presenters alongside me at IPL matches. Because Chandresh, in between moving from West Auckland, the Wild West, where we played rugby and, bashed each other up a bit, and then moved to the affluent North Shore where my uncle was living. So my parents split up, and my mother took me and my sister to live with my uncle over on the North Shore, and with my mother's boyfriend at the time. And we went over there, and you just had more opportunity to do other things. Cricket, sailing, surfing. You're on the North Shore, the affluent North Shore where the beaches are. And if you've been to Auckland, there's the Harbour Bridge, like Sydney, a smaller version of Sydney Harbour Bridge, and you've got those lovely northern beaches. And so I had an opportunity between finishing playing a bit of rugby out in Wild West, which is rugby and athletics or rugby league, and I got into pantomime with my mum. My mum is from a drama background, so a very thespian-orientated background. She used to manage dance companies, ballet companies, modern dance companies. And so I mixed with those theatrical types and went along and did pantomime on a Saturday morning because Mum was running classes and I had to do that and go along. So in a way, it sort of got you up to do theatre sports. What you did, they gave you a little note or a theme. Okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to be like Star Trek. Here's the chairs, and you're going to be the lieutenant. You're going to be the captain, and you're going to be the purser, and all this. And so you just got into role playing. And so for me, I think being in front of the camera came quite naturally because of that. As an 11 and 12-year-old, when I look back on it now, it's wonderful. It's almost like, say, doing people go to university or postgrad diploma or whatever, go do a TAFE thing. I did that when I was 11 and 12 and did more of that and enjoyed that. And I think watching the great Dennis Lilly, his theatrics, and Richard Hadley, those two protagonists, locking horns, allowed me to see that as a youngster and was very, very inspiring. And for a guy in his formative years, really stood out. So when I look at that, the cricket company, which is an idea for Martin Crowe, says, Danny, I've got an idea for you. You're coming in and doing the cricket. And I worked for Rebel Sport. I worked for a sports big wholesale place. They had a big retail. They also had a wholesale end. And I helped run some of the trade shopping nights for about 18 months before I got into the media side things, which I'm still involved with. So I did some sales and marketing when I first finished playing. And it just lent itself, Chandresh, to go into those avenues of, the theatrics of television and radio. Still love radio, doing a bit of radio from time to time. Hosted a radio show, Radio Sport in Auckland, chat talkback show like this in a way, like talk back on phone to people and their opinions and ideas, and everyone has an opinion, of course, with sport radio. So all of that fled and blended beautifully in for doing the cricket company with a bit of radio and a bit of commentary at the grounds.
And you fitted in very well because of all this background you've just spoken about. With the shorter formats, you are very much in demand in the shorter formats as a commentator. No one will forget your haka with Navjot Sindhu. Your Sardar impression was a bit controversial, to say the least. But the shorter formats really fit in well with your personality, especially your mention of the double Ds.
Right, yeah. Well, when you think about 2020 coming along, where it has, and that World Cup in 07, then the IPL starting in 08, is it like a natural progression of the game having to evolve and, of course, encompass a broader spectrum of fan base. And to survive, you've got to do that. And other codes have done that. Tennis has even, done that with the old boys circuit and golf and the old masters playing in an old circuit, giving different options. And I think with 2020, which was played in England, we used to all play it in the twilight because it was post-work and you could start the game at 6 o'clock in the evening or 6:30 and you had the twilight until about 9 o'clock in England because of the sun setting so late. And so, you played in those little mini leagues and then all of a sudden exploded into what it is today. And I mean, you've been around and come to New Zealand a bit, Chandresh, over the years, and the late great Martin Crowe with his cricket match, which is 4 lots of 10. Now, he wanted to encompass the thing of test cricket with the 4 innings. So if Virat Kohli got out in the first 10 overs early for naught, you could see him bat again. So the fans were like, like you do when you're playing in Mumbai all those years ago and the great Sachin Tendulkar got out early. You could hear a pin drop, or Virat gets out early, or whoever the big star batter is, and you can just deathly silence. Crowe's game of max cricket, I think, has got another hybrid to go with 2020. I think it can most definitely go to that of 4 lots of 10. Turn around the overs quickly. You'll get specialist fielders come in. It'll get a little bit even more Americanized. Crowe had the zones because he wanted you to hit straight. We love the guys who play 360. The modern game's gone that way, as we know. Chandresh, reverse, dill scoop, flicking, inside out, you name it. Score anywhere. But Crowe wanting to reward beautiful straight driving back over the bowler's head or a spinner instead of trying to cow corner slog him or go inside out and play a reverse sweep, whatever, which is great. No, love them all. But he wanted to reward guys playing straight and true, which is that lovely little straight and true. So 6 became 12, 4 became 8, as we know. And it was in a zone there under lights as an entertainment package. So when I look at my style of being and lots of energy and hype, I think it really did bode well for me. It suited me. And I think with the crowds, again, a no-brainer. When you get a full house and the noise, we as commentators feed off that massively. So with all this sad coronavirus going on, the COVID-19, I've just been doing some of that in the Pakistan Super League, where there's nobody there. You've just got the cameraman and a few dignitaries and the ball boys who are lucky to be there in this empty stadium. Very difficult for us. You can still get up a bit, but it hasn't got the same vibe, clearly, that the fans, and that's what the game, any sport's about, as we know, Chandresh. The game is about the fans, and without them and empty stadiums, very, very difficult. As an aside note, I just heard the great Jeff Wilson, All Black, on a Twitter feed chatting to a journalist in New Zealand, and he said, no brainer. As athletes, and he was a former All Black winger, star player, we would rather be playing in empty stadiums than not playing at all. That is for sure. He said that as categorically, as an athlete, this is what you do. You'd rather be playing behind closed doors than not playing at all. So it's a fascinating dynamic. Then from a broadcast perspective, like, holy heck, this is going to be tough. And it was. And we did, I think we did 4 games over that weekend before they called it quits in the PSL. So, very frustrating, massively frustrating to have empty stadia. But therein lies another challenge, as guys that give of ourselves and love the fan base and want it, this unique landscape, what can you do? I mean, sensibly, health rules, we know that. You've got to wait till it calms down. I'll be fascinated, and so will you and everyone else around the game or any sport, but particularly our game of cricket. What's going to happen? The time zones, can they fit these things in? Are they going to play, let's say, because we've got time now, at ICC World T20 here in Australia behind closed doors? Are they, conceivably, is that going to happen? Who knows? I mean, that's not till late October, so it could still happen like that. It's just so frustrating when you know how great the IPL is. The CPL in the Caribbean is so unique. I'm very blessed to work on both, and I'd be very sad. Particularly now, just with the timings, we just don't know what's happening, and everything's put on hold. Yeah, very frustrating.
Was it easy or difficult to get Navjot Sidhu to do the haka?
Oh, that, yes, on the show. That was a lot of fun too. And it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? So the first 10 years on Sony, and now, of course, it's gone to Star, and they're a lot more analytical. And some of it say, well, have they gone very serious? I think they've gone into more, that they're more about the cricket and the stats and the graphics, and they love that. And the thing that Star are probably fortunate over Sony when they had it for 10 years is they've now got a lot of ex-players who've played in the first decade of IPL. Now the Kevin Petersons, right, Matty Hayden, Brett Lees, all the guys that, Mr. Cricket, Hussey brothers, they commentate in it. Scotty Styris in studio, all the Dean Jones. So if you think of the guys that have played IPL that are now pundits and commentating or in the studio, Star have that dynamic. Whereas with Sony, it was more about Bollywood meets cricket. And I loved that. And you had the glamour girls and your Archana Vijay and Shabani hosting it, sideline, just Gaurav Kapoor, loved him. And he's a class act. Old Sammy sideline, and we'd dress up and do stuff and imitate, Amitabh Bachchan and do crazy stuff, and we loved it, and for me personally, I love the theatrics of that. That suited me. Didn't suit the others, but now, the seriousness of the cricket a bit more with the studio gig. That's just, the game again taking a different involvement and it evolving differently. So, saying it's not right or wrong, it's just, again, evolving and different. So, the IPL, what a gig. I mean, it's just such a big beast. And it's just so annoying what's happening.
I read, I did a bit of research before we started this chat, and I read about the fact that the move from New Zealand to Australia came at a difficult time for you. And when I look at your on-screen personality and see how much energy you bring on air, it's difficult to believe that someone like you has gone through so much, and then the move to Australia happened. Can you briefly talk about that move from New Zealand to Australia, and for someone like you, especially who's an extrovert
Mm.
personality, to be going through all that in that space? How was that phase in your life?
Look, I've talked about it at length, particularly down here a bit more so in Australia, New Zealand, Australasia, because I live here and I'm from New Zealand. Massive ripple effect, Chanders. I was just talking about it the other day, and there's so much going on with men's health, men speaking up about depression, the black dog. There's friends of my wife's and other publishers would like me to tell my story about around depression, getting heavily involved in drinking around the time that whole World T20 first couple of IPLs. Very tough for me, losing my sister like that to suicide. And you have no control over that. It's a bit like this coronavirus. A lot of just got no control over major things in our lives. So there was a scenario that really did shatter a lot of our worlds. I'm talking about the Morrison tribe. And I think it was just fortunate through my wife's connections here north of Brisbane to really bring our young children over and get some sunshine back, and particularly for Kim and I in our lives. The move there didn't all bode that well for me. I clearly hadn't dealt with my emotions enough, my depression, all of that really. And I think the shift from New Zealand, whilst it was great and I think it was needed, there was certain downturns to it. And then getting back on the circuit, because I got off that a bit, going back to radio and selling some advertising back in that time of 05, 06 when my sister did die. And I was around there for about 18 months, nearly 2 years before we moved to Australia. And it was great to be around home, but I could see, Kim, my wife, could see it was difficult for us. And it was just impacting on us. And it probably would have, perhaps would have cost me my marriage had I stayed in New Zealand and was swamped by that. I didn't help myself in terms of getting on the wagon and just drowning my sorrows and smashing alcohol and out late and just crazy, stupid stuff. So when I look back on that time, I'm grateful I've come through the other side and had really great therapy. We had a French woman in her mid-80s. She's now in her mid-90s. Around that time of late 09, 10, 11, around that time for me to be able to talk and get things off your chest and do it together with Kim and I and then separately on our own was very, very uplifting and completely important to me at that given time. So letting people in probably for the first time that are going to watch your YouTube interview of me here, there are lots of times when they don't see a lot of us as performers behind closed doors. We're tired, we're down, there could be something, drama happening at home, and invariably is when you have teenage children that I couldn't be around for. Times you just can't help as a human being feeling a little bit guilty that you're not there to help. But at the same time, in a basic form, Chanders, that, as hunter-gatherers, the men, peeling it right back to caveman days, we went out to hunt and gather. It's a bit like us going out to work and gather and put food on the table and pay bills. And it's a bit like, it is like that, whether we're broadcasters, salesmen on the road, merchant bankers moving, working for pharmaceutical companies, whatever you're doing, you're moving around. We just move everywhere, don't we? So, there's other fathers that spend a lot of time away from home. I'm just grateful, I think, to the extended family and networks here work well. So from being very high and energetic of a T20 game, you'll understand, and people watching this, that it's difficult for us to go straight to bed. So, in terms of me kicking back, relaxing with just a little quiet red old not to, just calming my farm. I'm now, since the middle of February, I've been told through a doctor's report, let's give alcohol a rest for a while because of your history and depression and carving it up, as it were. I'm not drinking alcohol as I stopped in the middle of February, and now here we are, middle of April. I'll do that right through to the end of July and just have this cleanse. And I'm, again, Chandler's very lucky in terms of my wife's tribe and involvement, in terms of healthy people around and what they preach and and what they eat and when they eat it, and all that thing of keto diets or paleo diets and high-end meat ones or high-end vegetarian ones, and just trying different things. So I'm very open to trying like that, different stuff like that. Again, for mental health, I think for me, people ask me, "Oh, you stay in quite good order. You're quite fit and you look after yourself." I said, I think mentally for us as humans, we need to move. For us, being grateful to have 2 arms and 2 legs functioning, to go for a run, to do a swim, go to the gym, to skateboard, to ride a bike, whatever it may be, as your thing, is to be spoiled to get out, even just go for a walk around the lake, or walk around the neighbourhood or whatever, walk the dog, do that. I think this time of COVID-19, I think is pulling it back to say what is really important. What, all the other external materialistic carry on, family, your health is your greatest asset. If they, you can have all the money in the world and all the riches in the world. If you're sick as a dog and then you could end up falling over, God forbid, and die, or be very ill and live with an illness for a long time, or you haven't looked after your health, well, what's it all about? What's the point? So I'm very blessed, Chandresh, in terms of, and then looking and exploring the Sufism of my mother. I'm not really a religious person who needs to pray every day or goes to a mosque or goes to a shrine. My belief in that is your food and getting out and exercising and doing that with my wife. We're out and about, my son or daughter going for a run, walk, whatever. But clearly for me, the mental health thing of moving and doing some sort of fitness, and having gratitude for the simple things like food, eating quality food, not indulging and abusing yourself now, and just having a really good simple outlook, and being grateful, massively grateful.
Did the owners at Delhi Capitals discuss with you before they changed the name from Delhi Daredevils to Delhi Capitals, because they robbed you of a moment on television? Yeah,
and loved it. I should have paid you. People said, "Jenny, you should have trademarked it." Ridiculous, but a lot of fun. You're right. With the double D's, it just flowed. So, and even the double R's. But as we all know, the double D's just flows better. It's like B's and C's, and you know what I mean. It just rolls, doesn't it? So what a shame. The DC's, it's not quite the same, is it, as the double D's? And those from Delhi and the double D's loving it. So I missed that a bit. You're right. In terms of calling it and commentating it, it's not the same, Chandresh.
Danny, there's one more thing that you do, and that is you are involved in this fight against meningitis. And am I right in saying that you contribute to that fight against meningitis? How close is this appeal that you're putting your might into it?
Yes, I did a charity boxing thing before I left New Zealand, and that was for the Meningitis Trust. And when Jake was born, he had about 3 lumbar punches, the spinal tap. In fact, I was in India. How's that? I was doing the New Zealand tour of '99, and there was a scare that he may have meningitis, and he was only 3.5 weeks old. And so it was very tough for Kim to take him into the Auckland Starship Hospital. So that's where, in terms of the Meningitis Trust, was born from or spawned from, for my involvement. And it was mainly in New Zealand, to be fair, and doing a lot of that whilst the charity for the boxing was great fun. My nose has never been quite the same. Of course, it was, you think at school or a bit of rugby or just playing in the rugby as a youngster, getting your nose broken. I mean, I had my nose broken a few times with boxing, just silly. And it's never been quite the same. People laugh, because one gets blocked off quite regularly in the septum. The surgeon said, "Look, we can fix it up." So then we've moved to Australia. So that was middle of 05, and then I moved here, late September 06. So, I might actually have that done later, but that through the Meningitis Trust, it's nice you put your body on the line and give to that. It was just nice to be able to do that. And really, it's such a cherished time, particularly for me and my family, because it's relevant to Jake being so young and could have died. But thank goodness for, children's hospitals and really top-class surgeons and doctors.
finally, Danny, can I have one message from you for people watching this, your fans, on one thing they can do to be active during this COVID-19 phase? One thing that they can do to stay active and be safe during this period.
Well, I think the great thing, and I'm telling you guys, and don't really have to, because India tends to be one of the homes of it, doesn't it? The subcontinent. Let's dress it up that way. Subcontinent, in terms of having yoga. And I think those that are into yoga before COVID-19, very spoiled, stretching, moves, that range of exercise and movement that's so graceful and requires strength, stamina, and all those things. For me, I think the message for at home for people, if they've got room and they have those rolled out, those easy foam mats or just or a carpet, whatever, just somewhere that's nice and easy, flat, to go through that stretching routine, and then those other crossed over, what I do is my legs are at 90 degrees and I do sit-ups. I have a hanging bar at home that you fit into your doorway. It's in a contraption there. A lot of people don't even either have that. But even the staircases, we can get underneath the staircase and jump up and hang on. If the stairwell's exposed, if it's not closed in and fitted in, we do that a lot. Particularly in the Caribbean hotels, leap up and just hang, release your spine and lift your knees up and move. Another great one I take on tour, Chan, is a skipping rope. And that's really from that meningitis charity boxing trust fight we did in July 05. I've taken a skipping rope a lot with me. And that's another thing you can do in your hotel room, or you got out of your hotel and just where we were and or even to the gym. But if you don't have a gym, and you're at home in your courtyard, you don't need a lot of room. Skipping ropes are great, and you get the heart rate up, and you're doing something that's getting your movement happening. You are lifting. Whether you do your 2 feet together or you can do the good technique of the foot to toe, heel to toe technique, doesn't matter. If you're not a great skipper, it doesn't matter. Just get out and do it. Feet together, just jumping on the spot, doing your skipping, and keeping that simple. Where you've got confined spaces, I get that, and I get that no more. An understanding in India where you're in apartments, people in big towns, ain't got a lot of room. And so that whole thing of just lying down, a few sit-ups, a few stretches, a few push-ups. I love doing push-ups. You can, as you say, you can do the bent knee version for the females if it's a bit tough, even for the blokes if we're a bit older like I am. And I love doing them on my fist press-ups. Again, heart rate up, you're moving stuff, your shoulders, your chest, you're doing some press-ups, all of those simple little things in your house that get you moving. If you can't go out and it's pouring with rain, or it's getting, so hot, as we know, in India's getting hot, we're getting cooler here down under, that you're just in a confined space, but do something. Skipping rope, for me, the winner.
Thanks a lot, Danny. It was great chatting with you and to really know the human side of Danny Morrison, the commentator par excellence, especially in the T20 format and the shorter format. Really enjoyable chatting with you. Thanks a lot for doing this.